Morning, everybody. As we do the Chitas of today, we're holding in the portion of Isisa, we're holding Friday, Purim, chapter 34, verse number 10. And he said, God said, I'm gonna hereby connect, make a covenant. Before all your people, as in the flourish, I will make a distinction. Such as not been created anywhere in the world for any nation. And all people to whom you are a part will see Hashem, the awesome actions of God, because it is awesome, which I'm going to do with you. Now she says, on this matter, that the Jewish people is going to be different. The Ashgacha Pratis, divine providence of the Jewish nation, will be totally different than all the other nations of the world. It says again, Neflois is a distinction. Beneflinu, you'll be distinct. By this, you will be separate from all the other nations, in that my presence will be manifest amongst them. Will not be manifest amongst them, only amongst the Jewish nation. Verse 11. Be mark well what I command you today. He did the Gerish Mepanecha. I'm going to chase away before you. I'm going to chase all these nations. The Hittites, the Perizzites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites. Rashi says these are only six nations I mentioned here. In the warning of fraternizing, for the seventh, the Grizites arose and left the land before the Jewish people came there. Be careful that you should not make a covenant with the people of the land, which you're coming upon it. Might it be a snare in your midst. Verse 13, you should shatter their altars. You should break the malish their pillars. You should cut down the defied trees. Now she says, this was a tree that they used to worship, was a famous tree, Ashera, which they would worship. You shouldn't bow down to any other god. Because God is a zealous God. Name is zealous. Elkanah, who is a zealous. Kana Shmoy, what does it mean? His name is zealous. He is zealous to exact retribution for idolatry and does not forego it. This is also the meaning. Any instance where it says kina. Kina means that the concept of zealousy where God does not forgive idol worship. Verse 15. You might make a covenant to the people of the land. Came, and then you'll go follow their gods. Came, you'll sacrifice to their gods. And they'll call to you. And you'll eat from their sacrifice. Rashi says, you might think that eating it does not warrant punishment, but I will consider as though you could subscribe to the idolatrous practice. For by doing so, you'll come to take wives from amongst their daughters for your sons, and therefore even getting together and fraternizing with them, idol worshippers. This is the idol worshippers. You might take their wives for your sons, and your daughters will go straight to their idols, and they'll take your sons to follow their gods. Verse 17, don't make yourself a molten god. Verse 18, as Chag HaMatzos Tishmer, should be careful with the holiday of Pesach, matzahs. Shivas Yom Techel matzahs, 7 days you should eat matzahs. Which I commanded you. For that appointed time, Chodesh Aviv, in the year of, in the beginning of the grain of ripening. Chodesh Aviv, because in the month when it's spring, when the grain starts to ripen, Yatzas Mitzrayim, that's the way went out. That's when you went out of Egypt. Nashes Chodesh Aviv, that's the time of ripening. Shatvua, the grain first ripenings. That's the word Aviv. Verse 19, all firstborns belong to me. Also, from all your livestock that issues from its mother, the male, the first male, Peta, Sher, Veseh, whether it's from a cow or sheep or goat, it belongs to me, belongs to God. Now she says, first the Torah talks about Peta Rechem Li is Ba'adam, Miknecha. Any of your livestock that gives birth to a male that opens the womb, the cattle, the sheep, meaning the male first child opens its womb. If it's a male, like a man, by a human being, if it's a boy, you have to give it to Bechor. You need to give it to God. Peter denotes opening. That's the word Peter. Verse 20, Peter Chamer. And then if you have a first donkey, you cannot bring a donkey to the Beis Hamikdash. It's an unclean animal. It's not a kosher animal. Tifta b'seh. You have to redeem it with a sheep. If you don't redeem this animal, then you have to kill the animal. You not have any enough from the animal, any pleasure from the animal. So too, you don't bring your child to the Beis Hamikdash. The Beis Hamikdash is not a daycare center for your children. You have to be paid to your children. And you must not appear before me empty-handed. Now she says, first of all, Petach Hamur, but not of any other impure animal. The only animal, because only by a kosher animal you have to give the first one to the Beis Hamikdash. But only by a chamur, not by if you have a horse, if you have a that has a firstborn, you don't have to give to Beis Hamikdash. You don't have to be paid. Only a chamur, because there's a custom, so it's a decree of the Torah. Only a chamur, a donkey. Tifta b'seh. What is the meaning? One gives a lamb to the kohen, which maintained its ordinary unsanctified status in the priest's possession. It belongs to the kohen, and the firstborn donkey is then permitted to do work for its owner. Barafte. Now she says Arafte is the concept of breaking its neck with a hatchet. The owner of the donkey caused the priest a monetary loss, so his property must be lost. He cannot ever have any pleasure from it. Now she says the redemption is set to 5 sloim. As it says later, you must redeem at the age of a month, according to the endowment of 5 shekel of silver later in the book of Bamidbar, the book of Numbers. What does this have to do over here? According to the straightforward explanation of the verse, Ash says this is an appended statement, and it's not connected to the law of the firstborn mentioned in the first part of the verse. For the commandment regarding the firstborn does not require to be before God in the temple. So really, it doesn't really connect it to the Beis Hamikdash. Rather, it's a separate prohibition. When you go up to appear before God in the temple for the Yontif, my presence not be seen empty-handed, meaning you're commanded to send the offering associated with appearing before God. You have to bring a korban. However, according to the explanation of the Brisa, this is a superfluous verse and thus open to derive an analogous based on a similar word, Gzeda Shava, to teach us that the gift given to a Hebrew bondsman at the end of a service, that it has to be 5 sla'im worth of each type, just like the redemption if you're the firstborn, as stated in Masechet Kedushin. So really, you have to bring a korban. L'yirah panei reikam is not the only time that it's written over here. So therefore, it's really an open verse. It's an interesting concept in the Torah when you have an open verse. Miki Yaser. It's an extra verse, and really, you can use it for other concepts. So this is a concept in the Gemara. It's left for Gzeda Shava. So if I find someplace else for a different law, this is the law Rashi brings down to Gemara Kedushin, the law of when you redeem somebody. He also needs to be a nakas evidivity. When you redeem somebody, a goy, a non-Jewish slave, you redeem him, he becomes a Jew. So now the Torah says as a anaka, there's a certain amount you have to give. For everything that you have to give a certain amount to him, so that he goes out with capability to be a free man. So there we learn the Gezerah Shav. It's 5 shekel for each and every product. So that's a extra verse. Verse 21, Sheish Yamatavid. For 6 days a week you shall work. The 7th day you stop working. Tishbais, you must refrain from plowing and reaping. Again, Rashi says, Lama Niska Chodesh Bekotza. What is one thing? It sounds like the pasuk is talking about Shabbos, and then suddenly it goes into the concept of reaping. That sounds like the 7 years, the 7th year. So this is an interesting pasuk. Some of our rabbis say you have to look at the Gemara that it refers to the prohibition of plowing in the year before the 7th sabbatical year, that influenced the produce of the 7th year, that once at the end of the 6th year, the produce that are going to finish in the 7th year is also prohibition, even though they started to grow in the 6th year. Maybe this is the meaning of the pasuk. Some sages hold prohibition of reaping the 7th year produce in the year following the 7th year. Also, those produce that start in the 7th year but end in the 8th year. And that's what the pasuk just teaches, that one adds parts of the regular year to the sacred year of the 6th year and the 7th year and the 8th year. And this is the meaning of the verse. 6 days you may work, but on the 7th day you must refrain from work. And that which I permitted to work for 6 days, there is a year when the plowing, the reaping is forbidden. It is unnecessary to state this prohibition regarding plowing and reaping in the 7th year, because that's already says that you're not allowed to plow and reap in the 7th year. You must not sow your fields. So it must be referring to the plowing and reaping before the 7th year and reaping after the 7th year. So that's one way of looking at this pasuk. Other rabbis say that this verse is indeed referring to the Shabbos. Talk about the regular Shabbos. That the reason why plowing and reaping are mentioned specifically is to tell you that just as plowing is also an optional action, so too reaping that is forbidden is only when it's optional. There are times this excludes the reaping, the barley of the Omer. So here the pasuk teaches an unbelievable thing, and that is that if for whatever reason the second day Yontiv Pesach falls on Shabbos, and now you have to reap the land to take the Omer, to bring it on the second night of Pesach to the Beis Hamikdash, but it's Shabbos. So therefore, the Torah tells you that you're allowed to do it, to do the mitzvah of reaping the field for the Omer is allowed to be overrides the Shabbos. It's like milah, it's like circumcision that overrides the Shabbos. So that's what the pasuk comes to teach us. Verse 22, Chag HaShavuos, the holiday of weeks. Tasalach you should make bikuri ketzil chitim, when the first produce of the harvest wheat, and they are now available to harvest it. The Chag HaOsiv, and then you have the Chag, the holiday of ingathering, that's Sukkot. Tkufas Hashana, at the end point of the year, turning point of the year. Now he says bikuri ketzil chitim, the festival of weeks, when one brings the offering of the 2 loaves, that's on Shavuos. That's called the wheat harvest. Shtei alechem. Bikure. This offering is because of the first grain offering may also be brought to the holy temple with the new crops of wheat and with for the Omer grain offering that was brought in the second day of Pesach. So the second day of Pesach is an Omer offering, which now allows everything, this Chodesh, this Yoshan, everything that now grows from after this, is now called totally Yoshan, and everything can be brought from it. Chag HaOsiv, the festival and gathering, at the time when you gather the products in your field, and that's Sukkot. This is used the term Asifa, bringing into the house. Kufas Hashana means at the time of the festival, the turning of the point of the year, which happens after Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, is the holiday of Sukkot. Kufa is the meaning going around, circling a new year, such a new year. Verse 23, Shalosh Hashem, 3 times a year, all your men flock must appear before the master of the world. God, Alekei Yisrael, the God of Israel. Oh, Rashi says, all men folk among you, Many commandments of the Torah are said in the place and repeated elsewhere, and some are written even 3 or 4 times. So to make us who infringe them liable to punishment for each numerous of passive commandments pertaining to them, it's many times written in the Torah about Shalosh Regalim. It's not the only time right over here. It's written a couple of times. It's already written in Parshas Bay. So it's already written many times, and the Gemara says it's written. It says so that a person Chas v'Shalom, if he doesn't do it, he incurs many avedas for not doing this mitzvah. Verse 24. When you must observe the festival because I expel the nations from before you. And none of the nations will covert your land. When you go up and appear, when you go up and appear before God, a few times in those days, for some people, it took 7 days to travel from Tzfas to Yerushalayim, or even further than Tzfas, from Hermon and from Lebanon. It took more 7 days to get to Yerushalayim. So people left their homes. 7 days going and 7 days going back. It's like 12. They were away from the home 14 days, and even more because they were there for the Yontif. So we're holding 21 days that they went away sometimes from their homes. So they're able to promise them that nobody's going to touch your homes. You can go and enjoy the Yontif, even though it takes you time to get there, takes you time to get back, etc. I'm going to protect your homes. Shalosh Pam Bashana 3 times a year. Ash's Eirish uncle is trying to say, I will drive them out. I'm sorry. Gerish whatever. Eirish means I will chase them out. Verchafti is gvul as gvulecha. I'll extend your boundaries. And since you may then be far from the chosen house of the temple and unable to prepare me constantly, I'm therefore appointed these 3 times. So the Yidden at least need to come 3 times a year to the Beis Hamikdash, and that was Pesach, Shavuos, and Sukkot. Verse 25. You're not allowed to slaughter my Passover blood. Al chametz on the when you still have leaven. That's where we learned that on Pesach, the prohibition of having chametz starts already in the 14th by day. And the Passover festival were not left overnight until the morning. Now she says, you must not slaughter the Passover sasa where leavened bread belongs to you still exists. This prohibition, not only against slaughtering the sacrifice, but also against dashing its blood on the altar, or against any member of the group eating its owning leaven. So you need to make sure that everybody in the group. And that's why Am Yisrael took upon themselves to start. Everybody starts Pesach earlier, so that everybody, even though it took time to bring the korban Pesach, everybody starts Pesach earlier. And when it comes to time of the korban, everybody already has burnt their chametz, has disavowed for chametz, put away for the chametz, sold their chametz, etc. But the Yalin, Passover festival may not be left over overnight. And the meaning is, as Uncle Chancellor, you may not, it may not be left over on the altar overnight until morning. However, remaining overnight has no effect when the sacrifice is on top of the altar, and the individual causing by remaining overnight only takes effect at dawn. That's why they were seared that they finished the korban light. They finished it by 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock chatzos. So that's why we tried to first say that Tita came before Chatzos, because in the time of Beis Hamikdash they would try to finish their meal, even though they could have waited till the morning, really, but they tried to finish everything before Chatzos. That night, Zevach Chag Pesach, it is designated parts of, but it means that because you can imagine that in the time of Beis Hamikdash, thousands and maybe millions. I don't know how many korbanos was brought to the Beis Hamikdash on Erev Pesach. Everybody brought a korban to the Beis Hamikdash. Thousands and millions of korbanos were brought. The Beis Hamikdash was busy till the morning getting. So the main thing is they had to have they needed to be on the mizbeach. the sacrifice needed to be, it took longer to burn, it needed to be on the Mizbeach. And that's what they needed to get all the sacrifice on the Mizbeach. Verse 26, Reishis Bekure Ad Moscha, the first fruits of your ripening. Tavi Beis Hashem Alakecha, you should bring to the land of your land, you should bring to Yerushalayim, bring to the Beis Hamikdash. You're not allowed to cook a young animal in its mother's milk. Now she says, Reishis Bekure Ad Moscha, from the 7 types of produce mentioned, which is praised, so it's praised by, and it says it's land of wheat, barley, grapevine, and honey. And this is stated in that verse, referring to dates of honey. You must not cook a young animal. This is the prohibition against mixing any milk and meat. We know it's written 3 times in the Torah, once to prohibit its eating, such a mixture, once to prohibit deriving benefit from such a mixture, and once for the prohibit of making such a mixture. So you're not allowed to make such a mixture. You're not allowed to eat such a mixture. You're not allowed to have any hana. So you can't make a milk and meat product for your dog even, because not allowed enough and a mixture of milk and meat. Gedi, Asher, this term denotes any young offspring of an animal, even a calf or sheep. Doesn't only mean a goat. And from the fact that the Torah needed to specify the number of places Gedi'izim, that's what we learned. The Gemara learns that when it ever says Gedi'izim, then it's a goat, specifically a goat. There are certain times when it's specifically a goat. But that's when it says Gedi'izim. If it says Gedi on its own, it means any kind of a young animal. You're not allowed milk and meat together. This expression is used to exclude fowl. Milk and meat is not fowl. It's not a chicken, since it does not have mother's milk. For the prohibition of mixing fowl with milk is not a Torah prohibition; it's a rabbanon. It's a rabbinical enactment. The mixing of chicken and milk is a rabbinical prohibition. The mixing of meat and milk is a Torah prohibition. So today, chicken is considered rabbanon, made chicken as milk, as meat. And that completes the Chumash of today. Tanya of the days, we're holding on chapter 34 of Tanya. It's known that the patriarchs were truly a divine chariot. In the Kabbalah, they are called the chariot of God. For all their days, every single day, forever, as long as they lived, they did not cease, even not stop even 1 hour. To binding their mind and the soul to the master of the universe. Didn't stop 1 second. For the mentioned above, absolute surrender and unity of God. Meaning their constant awareness in God's unity led them to be continuously in a state of self-nullification before God. As explained fully, I explained this in chapter 23. This self-nullification is what is meant by the terms a chariot. They're a vehicle submissive to the will of the pilot, of the driver. And after them, after these patriarchs that are mentioned in the Zohar, all the prophets, who similarly nullify themselves before the unity of God in varying degrees, each according to the level of his soul and his of an understanding. Madrigas Moshe Rabbeinu Olav Shalom, to the level of Moshe Rabbeinu, a blessed memory, Oila Al Kulanu, which goes above all, Sha'amar Olav, which is said on him, Shechina Midaberes Mitergrena Shamesha. The Shechina, the presence of God, spoke from the throat of Moshe Rabbeinu. He was such a total surrender to godliness that his every word he uttered was divine speech. The relation between Moshe's throat to divine speech is that of one's throat to his own speech. Your throat is a vehicle. It doesn't have his own agenda. You speak what you want to speak. Your throat does what it wants, what you want it to do. So too, Moshe Rabbeinu was totally like a throat to God. Whatever God wanted to speak, his throat said it. Ein zeh zachul Yisrael b'maimar Sinai and at Mount Sinai, is also a privilege to experience a glimmer of this level of self-nullification. Actually, the difference is Moshe Rabbeinu could handle it, but the Jewish people, Pasha, couldn't even handle it. Self-nullification. That's why we should be careful with self-nullification. But because blood dafki, you can handle total self-nullification. As our sages say, that every word that the Eibishter said, every word God said, their soul took flight. And God resurrected them each time. And that's actually representative of self-nullification. By a regular person, what happens, self-nullification, they die. They have taka klois and nefesh, what's called in Chassidus klois and nefesh, that the soul leaves the body. Aniskalel, Moshe Rabbeinu saw the Eibishter, spoke to the Eibishter, there was not bottle. He didn't die. It says the Nevi'im, that's why the Nevi'im, sometimes they went crazy. They called them Meshugoyim, because they went Meshuga physically. When they said the Nevuah, they went crazy physically. Therefore, because they were unable to live with this feeling of self-surrender before God, the Eibishter right away said to them, commanded them immediately to erect a sanctuary, build something begashmius in this world that will create this concept of self-nullification, because you'll be able to take a physical thing and surrender it. You might not be able to surrender yourself, but you'll be able to surrender the physical world. In this space of Mikdash, you'll be able to build the Holy of Holies, the Ashras HaShechina, so that the Shechina would dwell in this Holy of Holies. And a Yid created that. Because in this Holy of Holies, in this art in itself, was the revelation of the oneness of God. I'll explain further. The Alter Rebbe points out below that when one specific place is singled out as an abode of God's presence, despite the fact that His glory filled the entire earth, the uniqueness of this site lies in the revelation of godness which occurred there. Contrary to the rest of the world, where God's unity as sole existence being stands concealed, in the abode of God's presence, it is clearly apparent there is naught beside Him. We thus see that the revelation of God's unity, which the Jewish people experienced at Mount Sinai, but which they couldn't endure, was continued by the means of a physical sanctuary. Make for me a sanctuary, I'll dwell in your midst. And then the Aron, as it's brought down, that the Aron was Nimnam and noise. They saw spiritual revelations. The Gemara says there were 10 miracles that happened in the Beis Hamikdash every day. One of the greatest miracles was that the Aron itself, the Ark itself, had a space, but it didn't take any space. So it had a space, but it didn't take any space. So that was what's called, in Hasidic terminology, Nimnam and noise, like the bush that burned that didn't consume, the menorah that burnt but didn't consume. So you saw there a concept of infinity, so to say. It burned, but it didn't burn. Shachara Beis Hamikdash, and when the Beis Hamikdash were destroyed, Ein LaKadosh Baruch Hu Be'olam Mishkan Machal Mishifte. So there's no Mishkan, there's no Beis Hamikdash. So who Yichudi is Baruch El Arba Amashalachas. This is the 4 cubits of Jewish law. This is the mitzvah we do. The 4 cubits of Jewish law, when we do Jewish law, we learn Jewish law. Learning of Jewish law. When we learn halacha, we learn what the chachma and the ratzon of the Eibishter is in this world. This is every halacha that we learn and we comprehend and we do. We bring the Eibishter, we bring the essence of God into this world. So the halacha set out before us are the actual embodiment of God's will and wisdom. And that's the way it is. And which is one with God, the halacha. The halacha ruling represents the divine will, and that underlines its divine wisdom. Hence the Torah, God's unity, stands revealed. Therefore, after one meditates deep, according to his ability, on the subject of the above-mentioned self-nullification, that every Jew should be self-nullified, not only a tzaddik, but every Jew should even in his mind, even though he cannot do it in reality, but he can do it in his mind. according to his capability. Be careful with this, because you don't want to be bitter matzias. You want to live. That's what happened to the sons of Aaron, that they actually had a kolayas and nefesh. They actually died. The Eibishter doesn't want anybody to die. He wants us to live. And therefore, we do it according to our capability. He should reflect in his heart as follows. The capacity of my intelligence is small. Not only because I'm stupid, because it's not, I have a certain level of soul. My soul also is incapable of handling this revelation. So, because my soul will expire, God forbid, if it's too much, has too much revelation. So therefore, I am so small-minded. And not only am I small-minded, I'm small soul. My soul doesn't have the capacity of this revelation. Lias merkava, that I should be a constant chariot, or mishkan liyachudi is bara, and I should be a constant chariot or an abode for God's unity, with perfect truth. Because my thought cannot grasp or apprehend the maseges boyes baret, to apprehend and grasp the unity of God. Klal at all. Shum asoga b'olam. I am any degree of comprehension in the world. And we are. I'm not even on a iota. In fact, of that the Nevi'im, that the Oveis comprehended and grasped, and even the prophets, who were God's chariot and abode by the virtue of the awareness of God's unity as they grasped it. I'm far from that. Nevertheless, even though I'm not the Oveis, tzaddik, I'm not the Nevi'im, I'm not tzaddik, I can make a Mishkan. Mishkan, I, a regular Jew, can make for the Eibishter a sanctuary and abode by one way. I can learn Torah. According to my capability, according to my time. To make every day a time, make established time in the morning and established time at night to learn Torah. As it's stipulated in the law governing each individual situation. In the laws of Talmud Torah, the laws of how much every person is obligated to learn Torah. As our sages said, that even some Jews, by reading one Perek, one halacha, they did the mitzvah. So one halacha in the morning and one halacha in the night, you did the mitzvah. Suffice one who cannot manage anymore, for him to be regarded as engaged in studied Torah by day and by night. Therefore, by fulfilling the minimal quota, I too will become an abode for godliness. And when I learn that one halacha in the morning and that one halacha at night, that's all I can handle. That's all I can handle. And therefore, if that's what you can handle, to learn one halacha in the morning, learn some Torah at night, that's all you can do. 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night. That's what you can do. Then you should be happy that you're accomplishing what you were supposed to do. Your heart shall rejoice. You should be glad. And you should thank the Eibishter. You should thank God. You should be gratitude. You should show gratitude to God that you can do 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night. This is my lot. This is my capability. 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night. In a joyous and thankful. The merit that he has merited to be the host of the Almighty through his study of Torah, twice a day, and to create a sanctity of God twice a day, in the morning, 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes at night. According to my availability and my time, and according to my capacity, which God granted him. And if God only granted you 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night, and to do as much as you can do, my friend, you should be happy, you should be glad, you should be very happy in your chelek, in the opportunity that God has given you. And that completes the Tanya of the day. Today is the 14th day of the month. It is Purim chapter. If you do the chapter from chapter 80, 2 to chapter 86, you do the chitas of the day. Today, the Rebbe writes, first of all, my grandfather, Fidik Rebbe says, my grandfather told my father, Tzemach Tzedek, selected my modem printed in the Likutei Torah from amongst 2,000 my modem of the Alter Rebbe. So he was very selective. This is the grandson who put together the Likutei Torah. He put together his grandfather's teachings, the Alter Rebbe. He selected over 2,000 my modem. He selected a certain my modem to be put in this book. The Rebbe writes in the second thing, the Megillah, my grandfather wrote, the Rebbe Rashab wrote a Megillah. It's unusual. He wrote a Megillah, and you can see this Megillah actually in the library by 770. I saw it. He did not place the 10 sons of Haman in a separate column. There are some Megillahs that have a separate column of the 10 sons of Haman. The Rebbe Rashab's Megillah is not written that way. It's part of the page. It's on top of the page, usually. And it's a part of the page, and the page continues with the Megillah. So that's the way Chabad does the Megillahs, like the Rebbe Rashab. He wrote his own Megillah. And nor did he begin each column. There's some Megillahs that have a custom that each column starts with HaMelech. That was not the custom of, that's not the Megillah he wrote, the Rebbe Rashab. He didn't write such Megillah, and therefore Chabad also is not makbid. He's not careful that it needs to be HaMelech on every top of the page. And that's the Hayom of the day. My friends, I wish you all a wonderful, happy Purim. Those that are listening to me are still in Boca. We're going to have a Mikra Megillah here at 10 o'clock in 20 minutes, if you haven't heard the Megillah, and at 12 o'clock, and at 5:45. I wish you all a wonderful, happy Purim. It should be a Purim, a Yehudim, a Yisrael, a Simcha, a Sassim, encouraged, should be happiness, and joy, and gladness for the entire Jewish nation. God bless you.